Да наоборот ли, да, это есть на самом деле. Да наоборот, да нет. Нет, не надо. Ну, наоборот, значит, да. Ну да. Кстати, точно, да. Ну, он понял. так это есть смысл. Да, наоборот. Трое, два. Нет. Да нет. Да нет, он это имел. Взялся, не знаю. Чайник. Наоборот, это да, понятно. Наоборот, потому что да. Наоборот, да. Эй, держи здесь еще причем. Он тебя понял просто, да. Ладно, пусть не так. Да, наоборот. Понял. Наоборот, просто так это есть. Чё? Наоборот, ну да, так это единственный самый, да. И чё, нормально, нормально, как раз, да, наоборот, да. А, ну да, 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 вот это вот. Ну нет. А, ну да. Ладно, ладно. Ну да. Наоборот, значит, играет она уже там, да. Да, да. Наоборот, да. Ну нет, ну ладно. Нормально. Да наоборот. Так это надо было. Да-да. Ну наоборот. Да наоборот и. Да наоборот и. Да наоборот и. Да наоборот. Наоборот и. Наоборот и. Наоборот и. Да наоборот и. Да нет, да наоборот или нет, он понял даже. Да наоборот. Троллит он себя, да, троллит он себя, да. Нет. Ну наоборот, значит. начинающий, да наоборот, только да. Нормально просто и все. Да. Ну вот это это. Ну вот это и было на самое. Это что? Да. Да. Да, это он имеет в виду. Ну нет, ну и чё, в чем проблема-то? Я вспомнил. Ну наоборот, наоборот.
You're trying to build something great.
Do you write code? Tab 9 helps you code faster. Using artificial intelligence, Tab...
Наоборот, только наоборот.
One of our most popular videos of all time is called How to Read Notes. And this tells me that there are a lot of us out there that want to learn about reading notes and how to do it better. So, I thought it would be a great idea to create another video on how to read notes. So we're calling this one How to Read Notes Part 2. Before we dive into all the new stuff, all the new tips and tricks, and even we're going to repeat to help you read notes more efficiently and faster and actually maybe have fun while you're doing it. We're going to review a couple of the main points from our previous video, just as a little refresher course for those of you that might be joining us for the first time. So in notation, we have something called the treble clef. And the treble clef, it's just so pretty. It's got a nice little curl and swoop, and that usually means you're going to be playing with your right hand. We also have a symbol called the bass clef, which kind of looks like half a heart with dots, or like an ear, whatever you want to go with. That's called the bass clef. So the treble clef usually means we're going to play with our right hand, and the bass clef usually means we're going to play with our left hand. Now, the treble clef and the bass clef each live on a series of lines and spaces. So there's always going to be 5 lines and 4 spaces for the treble clef, and 5 lines and 4 spaces for the bass clef. And they live together on something called the grand staff, which is all connected beautifully like this, and it creates basically the template for all the music we're going to play over there at the piano. So, one of my favorite notes, and before we even get into all the other note names, we're going to talk about middle C, because middle C lives outside of the lines and spaces of the treble clef and outside of the lines and spaces of the bass clef, and it's a super important note because it connects the 2 clefs. So here's what I mean. When you see a note that lives on a line below the treble clef, it's kind of like they're like in no man's land, it's middle C. So you see one line extra, it's a little short little line, there's a note on it, below the treble clef, that's middle C. That tells you to play the C in the middle part of your piano with your right hand. Now, you might see a note above the bass clef, again, on its own little line, kind of in no man's land again. This is also middle C. So, when you see that, you're going to play the note in the middle part of your piano with your left hand. So this is C, you're going to play with your left hand, middle C, see it written kind of close to the treble clef, you play it with your right hand, same note. Now the beautiful thing about middle C is that you can take that as a starting point and simply count up your alphabet to get all the note names for all the notes in the treble clef. So middle C is C, you just keep going. D, E, F, G, etc. until you run out of lines and spaces. And those are the treble clef note names. You could do the same thing with the bass clef. You could start on middle C and this time work backwards down from middle C. C, B, A, G, F, until you run out of space. Those are the note names. It's that simple. It's how it works. Back in the good old days when I was taking music lessons, I was taught to use acronyms to figure out the note names. So for the treble clef, I had FACE, F-A-C-E, for the spaces, and every good boy deserves fries for the lines. And for the bass clef, I had all cows eat grass for the spaces, and good boys deserve fries for the lines. Now, the cows eat grass for the spaces, and good boys. For the bass clef, I had all cows eat grass for the spaces, and for the bass clef, I had all cows eat grass for the spaces, and good boys deserve fries for the lines. Now, that's eat grass for the spaces, and good boys deserve fries for the lines. Now that's great, but it creates a misconception that somehow the treble clef and the bass clef are their own separate things. And it was taught to, it's how it works. Back in the good old days when I was taking music lessons, I was taught to use acronyms to figure out the note names. So for the treble clef, I had FACE, F-A-C-E, for the spaces, and every good boy deserves fries for the lines. And for the F-A-C-E, for the spaces, and every good boy deserves fries for the lines. And for the bass clef, I had all cows eat grass for the spaces, and good boys deserve fries for the lines. Now that's great, but it creates a misconception that somehow the treble clef and the bass clef are their own separate things. And as you notice, like you see, they're not. It's all one continuation, continuum. I'm not really sure what word to use there, but you get what I'm saying. So one of the most revolutionary discoveries I have ever made about sight reading is that you don't actually have to read every single note. Let that sink in for a minute, because I was raised to believe that I had to just see those notes on those lines and spaces and have it memorized. And guess what? 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, 15, maybe even 20 years later, that's not how I get through reading music. I guess. I cheat. And when I figured out how to do that, suddenly sight reading went from being awful, an awful experience, to being something I actually enjoy doing. So I'm going to teach you how to see all those lines and spaces and all those notes on the staff and actually make sense of them quickly. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is landmark notes. And this is going to be what helps you negotiate all the other notes. Now, when I say landmark notes, I'm just referring to a couple of notes that you like really memorize and make best friends with on both the treble and bass clefs, because if you can do that, then everything else becomes easy. So we've talked about middle C already. That makes a fabulous landmark note. When you see that one, you've got it memorized, you know what it is, you know where it is, you know how to play it. A great landmark note for the treble clef, in addition to middle C, is the G line, because G, this is a fun fact for you, the treble clef has a nickname, and its nickname is the G clef. And look at that sweet little curl of the treble clef. It actually wraps around line 2 of the treble clef, which is G. So it's really easy to kind of memorize that the second line up from the bottom is G. So lock that down. I also like to use high C as my next landmark note. High C lives the second space down from the top of the treble clef, right there, and it's just easy for my eyes to kind of gravitate there. So when I see a note there, I just know that's high C. The C above middle C. So if I have those things memorized, it's very easy to then kind of guesstimate my way through the rest of the notes. So this is where we're going to take our landmark notes information and tie it into the wonderful world of intervals. So intervals is just a fancy way of saying the space from one note to the next note. So you might see our best friend middle C, and then you'll see a note just after it. Now they can be separate, so you can see a C. I'm going to play it. Middle C, and then next to that, you'll see a D. I'm not seeing that note. I'm not seeing D and going, that's a C and that's a D. I'm seeing it and thinking to myself, that's C, and the next note is just one up from C.
People always ask me what app I use to make my videos, and the truth is, it's so easy, it's almost embarrassing. So I use Vimeo Create, and it kind of does the editing for me. I just pick the photos and videos, and then add text. I choose from literally tons of options for style and music, and then Vimeo Create takes over. It does the cuts, the audio editing, the transition, every little detail you can think of. That's my secret.
Ну вот это он имеет в виду, да. Да, наоборот, блинчик.
So if I see a whole sequence of notes that are moving in little steps like that, from a line to a space to a line to a space to a line to a space, I'm not reading them. I'm reading the first note, C, and I'm just moving my hand up with those notes as far as they go. And if they're moving backwards, if they're moving down, it's the same thing. I just simply move my hand back down in the steps. I read that first note, and I move my hand back down in the steps. That's really the long and short of it. Now, these notes can be kind of separate, so C, and then over there we've got our next guy, which is just a step up, which is going to be D, because I know my musical alphabet. Or they can be right touching each other, which means you're going to play them at the same time. The next interval I want to look at is the third. Now, thirds are really quick and easy to identify. You can tell a third right away because it always goes from a line to the next possible line or a space to the next possible space. So that shape always looks the same. So let's say I see a note pop up